أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين المبعوث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الأطيبين الأطهرين الهداة المهديين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أما بعد. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It is already the end of the second day of the month of Ramadan, and just like these 2 days have gone probably a lot faster than we would have thought and we would have liked, the rest of the month will also pass, and before we know it, we will be in the middle and then in the end of this sacred month. Yesterday I mentioned a few thoughts introducing the act of fasting and why it is different from our other acts of worship. What makes it different? And that main difference is that fasting is something that is a matter of presence. It is a matter of intention, telling Allah that we are at His service. And that's something that it's not as easy for us to do with our other acts of worship. So for example, if I come to the masjid for salat, if there are a number of people there, I can't help the fact that I feel a little bit more proud that more people are going to see me perform that prayer. Just before the speech in these days of the month of Ramadan, we're going to have recitation of Quran. And I would encourage all of you, we heard the sounds coming from outside, if you make it to the center and you are here, come and sit in that circle. If you can read, then read. And don't be embarrassed if you make a mistake or if somebody corrects you. Making a mistake and being corrected does not mean that I am better than you if I correct you, or that you are better than me if you correct me. This is what we want to do when we learn the Quran and read the Quran. It is a collective effort. Mistakes and what we do right, all of that is part of the process. And we get as much reward for our mistakes as we do when we do it correctly. In fact, those who struggle and make an effort and have a hard time, they get more reward and more credit than those who have an easy time. Some of us, we might practice just as much as another person, but we don't have that fluency. So we get more thawab. We shouldn't be embarrassed about it. But there is no doubt that if I make a mistake when I'm reciting Quran, then I look around and I say, I'm glad there's not a lot of people here. And if all of a sudden I do a very good job, maybe better than I expected, then I might look around and say, is everybody listening or not? This is human nature. Prayer, fasting, even if a kid brings home his or her school report card to the parents, a child who has gotten C's does not accidentally leave the report card in the middle of the kitchen table for the parents to see. It might come that there's a few forms for you to sign. Can you sign this? Can you sign the report card? Can you sign, without looking at it? But if it's straight A's, then you come home, you're proud of it, you wait for your parents to be available, you say that, look at my report card, and you don't want just a signature, you want the parents to also recognize and know what you have done. This is human nature, from when we are children until when we are older. But fasting is something that is very different. The element of showing off does not even come in fasting. Because at most, I can tell you that I'm fasting. But then when I go home, in my own room, I lock the door. If I have a snack in my pocket, I might quickly eat that snack. and then rinse my mouth and come back out, and I'm not really fasting. Nobody will know whether it is a fast or it is not a fast. And therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that fasting is a sign of people's sincerity. In a way that reading Quran is not. In a way that salat is not. Because if you do it and somebody sees you, even you might have a hard time determining how much of it is for Allah and how much of it is for the people. So I try to be sincere, but we have that subconscious moment when we are proud of being seen. But in fasting, you might be proud of being seen, but nobody is going to be with you from Fajr time until Maghrib time. Even your spouse, even your children, even your parents, even somebody who lives with you and is with you for the entire day. You can always sneak out. And if you don't sneak out, and you don't break your fast and just claim to be fasting, that means that you're doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that is unique about fasting. And that is why there is a hadith Qudsi, where Allah says that as-sawmu li wa ana ajzi bih. Fasting is for me, and I will give the reward for it. People might have that question, that if a psalm is for God, then al-hajj liman, who is hajj for? Salat, who is salat for? Khums, who is khums for? Amr bil ma'ruf and nahi anil munkar, who are all of those things for? They're all for Allah. But there is one of those acts of worship where sincerity, ikhlas, purity is essential to it even being performed. The rest of them, we work to try to develop ikhlas. We work to try to develop sincerity. But during the performance of the Hajj, during the performance of that act of worship, there might be a mixture that will come in. We might realize it and be embarrassed and ashamed and do istighfar. We might not even realize it. But fasting, if you complete it, and you had even one instant when you were alone, and you could have taken a sip of water and you didn't, then that is a reminder of your sincerity and devotion to Allah. That is special. And recognize what makes fasting special and what makes it unique. Because it's only when we recognize that it will actually help us improve our niyyah. And that purity will carry over in our other acts of worship. Otherwise, if I don't appreciate what is unique about fasting, it is a time to practice that ikhlas. It is a time to practice that sincerity. If I don't recognize that, then there is no way that it will be able to carry over in my other acts of worship. Now, a few clarifications. Let us say that when I come to the masjid, I don't intend to be showing off, but I can't help but being impressed when other people see me praying. Or I can't even help myself doing a better and a longer qunut when I'm in the masjid. Normally after I finish my prayer, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and then Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, and we're already out the door. But then when I'm in the masjid, all of a sudden I remember, wait a minute, there is a tasbih also, let me do the tasbih. And there is a sajdat al-shukr, let me do the sajdat al-shukr. Now I might not do that intentionally to show off, but just out of embarrassment, just out of that habit, it happens in the masjid, it doesn't happen elsewhere. What is the proper response to that? Some people might say that therefore, don't go to the masjid because you're just being hypocritical. Pray at home because then you are going to be sincere. And Islam has already foreseen that challenge that we have. Allah didn't create us without knowing what He is creating. That is a belief that you find among some non-Muslims, that before the flood of Prophet Nuh alayhi salam, that Allah was disappointed with humanity. And what has He created? And He said, let me bring a flood and put all of them to death, and let's try again. Take 2 of that scene. But in Muslim belief, Allah knew beforehand what was going to be created. Not only Allah knew, even the angels knew. أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَنْ يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءِ. So if the angels knew, how could Allah not know what was going to be created? Allah created us to have those challenges and to have to work and develop our sincerity. So the solution is that you come to the masjid, and when it comes to your wajib prayers, ignore that element of pride that comes when you are seen. This is a hadith that Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam was asked, and he said, ignore it. This is something that you don't control when you are proud that you are seen. Ignore it and make it such a habit that eventually it leaves and it becomes forgotten. And if you want to see how that process works, then do somebody a favor. Let's say that yesterday I gave the example of a mother. A mother doesn't owe making breakfast for her children who are able to make their own breakfast, or for her husband, or for anybody else. But it might be a parent, it might be a co-worker, you bring somebody a coffee. The first day you bring them a coffee, they'll say thank you. You didn't need to do that. The third day, the fourth day, the 10th day, the 15th day, eventually it'll become a habit. And there will come a time where if you've done something that's extra for somebody, and you stop doing it, then they will ask, well, what happened to today? Why didn't you make me breakfast today? Why didn't you bring me the coffee today? Why didn't you do today what you've done? Just repeating it by itself creates the expectation. Even if the 50th day is no different from the first day, if you didn't owe it to that person, it is a gift. And it should have the same amount of gratitude once it's a habit as it has the first day before it's a habit. But we are not as thankful for things that we have become accustomed to. Volunteers who have worked in the masjid, if they have opened the door and they have cleaned up, then maybe the first day that somebody joins, we say thank you. Then eventually we say, well, you missed a spot over here. And don't forget to take out the trash that's in the other room as well. This is part of our human nature. So if we see that, then we should recognize the same thing will take place when we go to the masjid. Eventually, we will realize that praying is just fulfilling a debt to Allah. It's not a favor, but we are repaying a debt. And normally we're repaying that debt late. If I borrow $20 from you, and I say I'll pay you back tomorrow, and then I forget the next day, and I forget the next day, and I forget until a month later I come and I give you the $20, how arrogant am I going to be that I've paid you back? I will be apologetic because I'm just repaying a debt, and I realize that I'm also late, and you gave me a fresh, crisp bill, and I'm giving you a wrinkled, old bill, so I've more to apologize for than I have to be arrogant about when I'm repaying that debt. Eventually, if we make a habit of doing our wajib prayers in the masjid, then it will become our baseline. And we will begin to be more apologetic and humble than we will be arrogant by doing that prayer. Are there people who come every day to the masjid and are not humble? Yes. And then they have to wonder, what is it that they think they are doing when they are praying? Are they doing something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala needs? They're doing a favor. Allah, I'm giving you a loan. You needed spiritual power, I've sent my salat. And now you have something that you didn't have before. So if that process is not taking place, then I have to look inside myself and wonder, am I actually doing a salat? Because a salat is an act of devotion and worship and servitude and humility. The first day, it's forgiven if I am not able to resolve that arrogance. The second day, it might be forgiven. But if I've come the entire month of Ramadan, and on the 30th day I still don't have humility after my salat, then there was something wrong that I was doing during those 30 days. I'm not saying you have to start out perfect. What I'm saying is that I should try to develop gradually that greater humility and recognition. And if I'm not doing so, it's not a salat that I'm performing. I'm doing something else, and I have to correct it, and I have to rectify it. Very good. That's our wajib prayers. But then what about trying to get the additional level of purity and piety? Where does that come from? And I said Islam gave us a comprehensive teaching because Allah who created us knew our weaknesses and our strengths. The teaching that we have in Salat is an example of that. Allah says that your wajib prayers, it's recommended for you to perform them in a masjid. Your nawafil prayers, it is recommended for you to perform them at home. So there is a time to affirm a baseline, to think that I am just paying a debt, to do it in a community, so it becomes an expectation for everybody. Those of you who are from an Indian, Pakistani background, you know that sometimes when you praise somebody for being religious, you say namaziya. That's not praise. That's kind of like saying this person does not steal. This person does not abuse other people. That if you give this person $5 as a trust, you'll return that trust. Now, if that's how you praise your friends, you need a new circle of friends. So if you're praising people by saying namazi hai, 5 waqt ka namazi hai, sometimes we have people who pray 4 prayers a day. But the 5 waqt ka namazi, now this is the gold standard. No, waking up for Fajr is not the gold standard. That's the minimum standard. Salatu Sawm ka paband hai. This person, he prays and he fasts. That's not some kind of praise. That is a minimal standard. So for the wajibat, Allah says that you need to have a minimum standard of what is required. But then on top of that, you have an unlimited horizon of mustahabbat. And those mustahabbat, it's best to do at home. That's not now to create a baseline where we all feel some social pressure to also do the fast of Ramadan, to do the wajib prayers. For those wajibat, yes. The social pressure is also one of those helpful elements. But for mustahabbat, this is just between me and God. So to do so at night. And that is why, if you look at our wajib prayers, we have Dhuhr and Asr. The longer prayer is in the daytime. And Salatul Layl, which is the best of our nawafil, actually to be more precise, the second best. The very best of our nawafil is which one? Anybody know? Even better than Ghufayla. The best nafila to do and the most fadila is the nafila of Fajr. And it's also the shortest. 2 rak'ah before Salatul Fajr. In Ramadan, it's easy because you're already awake. So when you have that imsak is over, and now you have the few minutes until Salatul Fajr. There's 2 very difficult times. The whole 17 hours of the day that passes very easily for people. The 5 minutes before iftar are often very difficult. And that 5 or 10 minutes between imsak and Fajr are often very difficult. And I don't know, maybe we can take a survey and find out which one is more difficult. For those of us who haven't gotten enough sleep, then many times, how many minutes before I can pray Fajr? I've brushed, I finished my sahur, I just am waiting now so I can go back to sleep. And then I have a long day ahead of me. Sometimes for people that's the more difficult one. And sometimes the more difficult is it's almost time for Maghrib, now how many minutes are left? For our younger community members, I will wager that yes, iftar is the more difficult. But for many of our older community members, especially those who have work, imsak is the harder one. So the very best nafilah that you can do is nafilatul Fajr. That's the perfect time. Before adhan even, you can do it before adhan. You've brushed your teeth, you're already awake, do the nafilah of Fajr, and then that'll at least take a minute, 2 minutes out of that waiting period. So the nafilah is meant to be in privacy. You can do it in the masjid, but then it's not done in congregation. It's done individually. And this is the point that our imams from Ahlul Bayt of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wa alihi, they made in criticism of the Sunni schools and of the Khulafa. Caliph Umar, as you know, he instituted this practice of Taraweeh. And the Shia don't practice Taraweeh. Now, is this just kind of animosity that we have against Caliph Umar, that because he did it, we're not going to do it? Or is there a reason and a philosophy? The reason and the philosophy is that Taraweeh in its origin was simply the nawafil of Shahr Ramadan. And the nawafil of Shahr Ramadan are narrated in the Shia school and are narrated in the Sunni school. And there are differences of opinion. If you look at Sunnis, how many rak'ah should be done every day? Is it 20 rak'ah? Is it more? Is it less? So they have a difference. In reality, that is the nawafil of Shahr Ramadan. The difference is that their caliph came and said that if everybody is going to do the nafilah and the nafilah is so beloved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then let's do it all together. And when we make it into a jamaat, then it will be more beautiful. Now, if you are ever taught a class, either as a teacher or as a student, and you've ever done an extra credit project or you've assigned an extra credit project to your students, you know that when you make that extra credit project part of the assignment, then it's not even better. It destroys the whole point of having extra credit. The whole point of having extra credit is to recognize those people who will be motivated to do something beyond what they are going to be punished if they don't do. And then once I say that, well, since extra credit is extra learning, let me make it required, what have you done? You've undermined the whole reason why you should have extra credit projects in order to recognize people who have extra motivation, extra drive, and give them extra reward and extra recognition, whether in school or at work or in the masjid or in the hereafter. Those people who have extra drive, they deserve that reward and that recognition. That was the whole philosophy for the nawafil in the first place. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants that to be preserved. And doing taraweeh in jama'at, in congregation, as almost a requirement. Sometimes you have people who in Rajab they don't pray their wajib prayers, but in Ramadan they do taraweeh. If you have friends, you know these people. Why do they do that? Never do taraweeh and do your fara'id in Rajab, and you are going to be closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's not Shia fiqh. Even in their own fiqh that is the principle. So where did this result come? That taraweeh becomes more important because that difference between faridah and nafilah was ignored. And that creates not just a problem from your eyes and my eyes because we are followers of Ahlul Bayt, but even in their own eyes. And according to their own fiqh, the priority of the faridah of Rajab is greater than the nafilah of Shahr Ramadan. But the social pressure works differently because of the bid'ah and the change that was brought into Sharia. So now, is it nafilah more important or faridah more important? Faridah is more important. But there is no comparison. The nafilah is only a nafilah if it builds upon a faridah. If it doesn't build upon a faridah, it's nothing. It's not extra that is lacking something. It is nothing at all. It's kind of like if you want to take a road trip, and so you want to have some comfort in your drive. The faridah is that you need to have a car that can take you from one place to another place. The nawafil are all of those things that you might add to your car. Those of you who, like me, don't have all of the nawafil as part of your car, you might say that I'll buy a cushion so that I don't have an uncomfortable drive. I might buy heated seats. I might add a navigation system. I might add some other kind of maybe a remote control start so I can start the car before I begin driving. Many people, they add these things to a car after they've already purchased it. Some people, they buy it when they buy their car. But in both cases, the car itself is the faridah. All of those other things are nawafil. Now let's say that you've bought that aftermarket stereo system, navigation system, heated seats, everything that can make the ride comfortable, and your car breaks down. How is your road trip going to be? You can sit on all of those things and put the navigation system in your living room. It's not going to help you get anywhere, because nawafil without the faridah are zero. Faridah without the nafilah is something. Now, after you get to your destination, you might be tired. You may need to take a shower and have a cup of coffee to replenish yourself. but you'll be there. The fariḍa is the same way. It will get you there. Without the fariḍa, you're not even going to get there. Let's look at a hadith of Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam. So in this hadith, actually let me look at a hadith of Imam Ali alayhi salatu wassalam, Amir al-Mu'mineen. And then because we'll be out of time, we'll come to the remaining ahadith inshallah in the future. But Imam Ali, he says that صَوْمُ الْقَلْبِ أَفْضَلُ مِنْ صِيَامِ اللِّسَانِ وَصَوْمُ اللِّسَانِ أَفْضَلُ مِنْ صِيَامِ الْبَطْنِ. That for my heart to fast is better than for my tongue to fast. And my tongue to fast is better than my stomach to fast. Now, out of those, Sawmul Qalb, which is the best, Sawmul Lisan, which is better, and Sawmul Batn, which is good. Which of them is the fariḍa? Sawmul Batn. So if I eat something in the day of Ramadan, I'm not fasting. But if I get angry and I speak annoyed or angrily to you, am I no longer fasting or I am fasting? I am fasting. If my qalb is not perfectly attentive to Allah and I waste time, or I have an opportunity to read Quran and I go and I watch a TV show instead. So this qalb is not fasting. Is my fast broken or not? No. So Imam Ali says that صَوْمُ الْقَلْبِ أَفْضَلُ مِنْ صِيَامِ اللِّسَانِ وَصَوْمُ اللِّسَانِ أَفْضَلُ مِنْ صِيَامِ الْبَطْنِ. But one of them is the fariḍa. The same philosophy applies. The reason is that صَوْمُ اللِّسَانِ and صَوْمُ الْقَلْبِ only has meaning if it is done for extra credit. Not because of fear of punishment, but because I actually want to have the akhlaq that is pleasing to Allah. Now, some people might say that there's many people who fast, but they don't have good akhlaq. I don't fast, but I have good akhlaq. Well, you have the navigation system, you don't have a car, it's not going to benefit you. The good akhlaq, all of those extra things, they're meant to build upon that basis. So don't put them in competition with one another. But once you have the car, then you don't want the car to be a damaged, rusted, frustrating, unreliable car. You want it not just to get you there, but to get you there safely. And you want it to get you there in style. And that comes from having Sawmul Lisan, from having Sawmul Qalb, the tongue and the heart. So all of them, they come together. They're not in competition with one another, but they build upon one another. And I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for myself, because I need that reminder more than any of you, that may Allah allow us all to fast with our stomachs, with our senses, with our tongues, and with our hearts. And we conclude this month closer to God, closer to the Prophet, and closer to Ahlul Bayt than when we began this month. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And I request you all to recite a Surah Fatiha for the sponsors of tonight's iftar. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim.